morning, everyone. Good morning. How is your heart today? Is your heart kind? How is your mind? Is your mind calm and clear? Excuse me. In this video, we're going to discuss the never ending cycle of suffering that you're in. We've been discussing about being on a spiritual path or a religious journey to find meaning in our life. And we've been talking about, well, let's call them systems, okay? Spiritual paths and ways and religious ways and paths and philosophies have systems in place, methods. And what's true is they all have this in common, and that is sitting in silence, sitting still. I described what I do first thing in the morning, and that's not the only time during the day I sit still and sit in silence. And the point I'm trying to make is my devotion starts first thing in the morning. When I wake up, upon awakening, I immediately go outside. Remember, I said that. That's how I start my day. That's how I start my religious or spiritual devotion. And it includes sitting still, sitting in silence. Now, I do it 5 to 10 minutes, but however, albeit nonetheless, most of the systems out there say at least an hour. Who can sit still for an hour? That's not saying you can't do it if you're committed. So, that technique, I'll put a link in the video. That technique I use, how I start my day. Upon awakening, I move, okay? And I don't have suffering in my life like I used to. So let's talk about the system that you use. It could be a spiritual path or way or a religion. And in these systems, there are techniques and practices: prayer, meditation, self-examination, self-inquiry, these things. The big one's the meditation, which is sitting still, sitting in silence. That most people can't sit still for 5 minutes, let alone 10 or an hour. And of course, a lot of the systems have meetings, in churches, temples, and places. But if you're in a system and you're still suffering, that's what this video is about. And it's going to require you being honest. Honest. I want to give you an example of my AA experience and how I discovered from that I was in a perpetual state of suffering. So, what we're going to get into is, and this is part of the perpetual state of suffering, what do you identify as? What do you identify with? So in Alcoholics Anonymous, it says the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. So when you have a desire to stop drinking, you are a member. All right. The first step in Alcoholics Anonymous is abstinence from alcohol. And then there is a method. There are practices to apply to your life. To do what? If you use the principles in that book, what will happen is described in the preface in the big book. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And we're going to tell you how we did it. That's the purpose of this book. And we're going to talk about God. So what that tells me is, once I'm a member of AA, I am able to recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body using that book. And it's going to include God or higher power. Isn't it so? However, every time you want to say something at an AA meeting, and I'm not going to use my name because I don't identify with that anymore. If your name is Bill and you want to say something at a meeting, whether you're there for 1 week or 20 years, you're required to say, my name is Bill and I'm an alcoholic. If you're an alcoholic, what does that mean? Well, an alcoholic is a person that cannot control their liquor or abuses liquor. If you're an alcoholic, you're a person that cannot control their drinking and abuses alcohol. That contradicts what's in the book, in the preface, what those first 100 men and women said. We have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. So you should identify with that after a period of time as a member of AA. But you don't. You identify as what you were before you became a member. A person who could not control their drinking and abused alcohol. That contradicts what the program is about. So every time you say that, my name is Bill and I'm an alcoholic, in your mind, you're still a problem drinker. You follow me? You could say, in a way, you're reaffirming that you never recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind because you're still identifying as someone who cannot control their drinking and continues to have alcohol abuse situations. So you're identifying as an alcoholic. See, I know what you're thinking, but let me make this point. In the preface, where it says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are 100 men and women, over 100 men and women who recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, it doesn't say we are 100 men and women who are alcoholics, does it? They identify with being members of Alcoholics Anonymous who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. They're not saying we are over 100 men and women and we're alcoholics. Isn't it so? And so that's one of the reasons I don't go to meetings. I'm recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body because I did what it says on that preface. What they told us is the answer to the riddle, the book, and God. The same thing goes if you belong to a congregation. You join a church, you're in shambles, you have a lot of problems, and someone in authority will tell you, well, we have the answer to help you with your problems. And so you join and you go for a while, then all of a sudden, the floor falls out from underneath you. And then what you're told is you have sin nature. You're going to always sin. You're always going to sin. I thought Jesus was supposed to help me. And then you're told, and this is the same, this happened in Alcoholics Anonymous when I was in that perpetual state of suffering and I still had problems with character defects and shortcomings. Well, you're not going to enough meetings. You got to go to meetings every day then. And in congregations, you're told, well, you need to go to all the services. Are you tithe? And no, you have to tithe. These things. Unlike Alcoholics Anonymous, then when all else fails in the church, you're told it's the devil. But yet, the system in place in the church, well, in the New Testament, the system is supposed to help with all the problems, but yet it's not. Or something else is happening. So this brings us to the perpetual state of suffering, the perpetual cycle of suffering. And there's two questions here. Well, here's what's common in both of these situations, all right, that I described. Here's what's common. When all else fails, you blame yourself. Isn't it so? And I mentioned this in a video the other day. If you didn't watch that one, birds of a feather flock together until the cat comes. If you're in a system, whether it's a spiritual system or a religious system, and you're falling short, let's just call it that. If you're in a spiritual system or a religious system and you're falling short, that's when we say, oh, I'm human. What do you expect? I'm human. Or different scenarios that I described. Well, I'm Irish. What do you expect? I'm Irish. My ancestors came from Germany. That should tell you something, these things. So here's the two questions. If you're in a system that has principles, philosophies, teachings, and methods and techniques that should and will improve your quality of life, and your quality of life isn't improving, then two things are going on. One, you are not diligent in applying those techniques, those methods, the principles to your life. You're not diligent with it. You're not doing it properly. Or two, that system isn't working for you. Once I'm recovered from alcoholism based on the principles in that book, and I recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, and I attribute it to prayer, meditation, self-inquiry, and conscious contact with a higher power, I'm no longer an alcoholic. You follow me? When all else fails and you're in a religious system, then you forever remain a sinner. So what's the use then? Either you're not applying the methods, techniques, the principles, the philosophies of the spiritual path or religion to your life, or that system isn't working for you. And you're in a perpetual state of suffering. You know, I remember back in both my experiences with the spiritual path, spiritual way of Alcoholics Anonymous and being in a church. I was so happy to tell people, they would ask me, how you doing today? And I would say, whoa, much better. I go here now. I'm doing this now, right? Things are looking up. Excuse me. But then I'd fall short. I was still falling short. It seemed like those things I was trying to change in my life didn't change, and they didn't. So I wasn't going to these people that were friends or family, the ones I told, things are looking up, things are looking great, I'm participating in this group, this society, this congregation. So now, well, things are falling short. And now I'm going to them and saying, well, it's not the system. I'm human, I'm human. or I'm Irish. Those things I discussed in that video. Well, how was it that that system you were going into, whether it was AA or a church or whatever, spiritual pathway or philosophy, religious and otherwise, how was it that you went from being enthusiastic because you were told, and there's teachings, there's books, there's teachings in all these systems. So you were so enthusiastic about it because you were told, you were made aware of, you are now familiar with, there are systems in place with practices, techniques, and all of a sudden you went from enthusiastic to now you're still in a perpetual state of suffering. Make it an amazing day. It's your choice, not somebody else's. It's your choice. It's your decision, not somebody else's, what kind of day you're going to have. And why not have an amazing life? It's your choice. It's your decision what kind of life you're going to have. Either it's you failing to follow through with techniques, methods, and philosophies, or the system you're working with isn't working for you. I'll see you in the next video, hopefully. Johan out. Peace.